Liam Carter was cleaning up the late shift at the small diner when he noticed a thin woman holding a 5-year-old girl standing motionless by the door. They looked at the price board, then bowed their heads and stepped back. Liam walked over and asked quietly. The little girl whispered, "Mommy, I'm hungry." The woman's eyes turned red. She pulled her daughter into the darkness. But when Liam offered a bag of warm bread, she choked up. We don't know where we'll sleep tonight." Liam looked at the mother and daughter shivering from cold. He took off his apron, opened the door, and let them step into the warm light. "Then, tonight you come with us." Liam Carter was 33 years old, a single father working the evening shift at a small diner at the end of the street. His wife had died 3 years ago in an accident, leaving behind their 4-year-old daughter Lily and medical debt that still wasn't fully paid. Liam's life consisted of 3 things: working twice as hard as most people, caring for his child, and trying to maintain decency even when life wasn't being kind to him. In the dim yellow light of the diner, the image of that thin woman holding a child made his heart clench. Too familiar, too much like himself 3 years ago. When he offered the bag of warm bread and heard the woman whisper, "We don't know where we'll sleep tonight," Liam understood that this wasn't a plea for pity. This was desperation reaching its breaking point. He invited them into the diner, pulled out a chair for the little girl, placed a clean towel under her feet so she wouldn't get colder. The woman tried to refuse, afraid of being a burden, but Liam said gently, "It's safer in here than out there." He asked their names. The woman said her name was Mara, and the little girl was Emmy, 5 years old. Both wore thin clothes soaked with rain. A torn suitcase beside them contained only a few children's outfits. When Liam brought over hot soup, Emmy grabbed his hand and whispered, "Mister, can you let us stay for 5 minutes? Mommy's tired." The question made Liam's throat tighten. He let them sit until the diner closed. Mara apologized for not having money to pay for the food. Liam just shook his head. "You don't need to pay when you're trying to survive." Mara's eyes reddened, not because of the food, but because for the first time someone treated her with kindness without demanding anything in return. Liam decided to take them home. It was the small rental room he'd moved into temporarily after selling his old house to pay debts. But he knew having a roof was better than leaving them on the street. On the way, Mara spoke in broken sentences. She had once been an accountant for a small company. After her husband left and the company went bankrupt, she lost her job, couldn't pay rent, and was evicted by her landlord today. She had no one left to turn to. Liam listened and saw an image of himself 2 years ago, running everywhere looking for work, holding his daughter as they slept in his pickup truck for a week because he couldn't afford to rent a room. When they arrived home, Lily, Liam's daughter, ran out and hugged her father's legs. When she saw Emmy, she immediately offered her old stuffed bear. "You can hug him when you sleep." Emmy hugged the stuffed animal like a treasure. Mara covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back sobs. The first life marker, a child's kindness making an adult cry. Before sleeping, Mara looked at Liam and said, "Thank you. No one has done this for us in a long time." Liam simply replied, "Tonight is just the beginning. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." The small apartment felt warmer than it had in months, not because of the heater, but because of the presence of people who needed each other. Liam gave Mara and Emmy his bedroom while he slept on the couch in the living room. Through the thin walls, he could hear Mara quietly crying. Not from sadness, but from relief. The kind of crying that comes when you finally feel safe after being in danger for so long. Lily tiptoed out of her room and whispered to her father, "Daddy, are they going to stay with us?" "For a while, sweetheart. They need help. Like how we needed help after Mommy died." Liam pulled his daughter close. "Exactly like that." "Then I'm glad we can help them. Mommy would want us to." Those words settled into Liam's chest like a warm stone. His daughter understood something that many adults had forgotten, that helping others wasn't about having extra. It was about recognizing shared humanity. In the bedroom, Emmy whispered to her mother, "This house feels safe." Mara kissed her daughter's forehead. "I know, baby, I know." For the first time in weeks, they both slept through the entire night without waking up in fear. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story reaches. The next morning, Liam took Lily and Emmy to school, while Mara followed him to the diner to help clean up. She didn't want to feel useless, even though he hadn't asked for help. But the appearance of a poor woman carrying a child and following a single dad immediately attracted the attention of the gossipy regular customers. A well-dressed woman in the diner laughed. "Liam, picking up another stray to feed? That's very generous of you." Mara bowed her head, her hands clenched white at the knuckles. Emmy hid behind her legs. Liam responded softly but sharply. "They're not strays to be picked up. They're people." But his answer only made them laugh louder. At lunchtime, the diner owner, Ms. Linda, called Liam into the kitchen and asked in a suspicious voice, "Who is she? Be careful you don't get fooled like when your ex-wife left you." Liam's face darkened. That was real humiliation. Mara stood behind the curtain and heard everything, her eyes going dead as if she'd been slapped. Linda didn't stop there. "I don't want homeless people wandering around the diner. It affects business. Customers don't want to eat where beggars hang around." Mara burst into tears, apologized, and was about to carry her daughter out. But Liam blocked her path. "If anyone has to leave this place, it's me." Linda was shocked at them. "You're quitting?" Liam answered, "I won't work anywhere that looks down on people in need." The humiliation escalated when Linda mocked, "A poor man trying to play hero. Do you think you can support 3 people?" Mara grabbed Liam's arm, panicking, whispering, "Don't do this because of us. You still have Lily." But Liam only said, "My daughter needs to see me standing on the right side." He gathered his apron, took Mara and Emmy by the hand, and walked out of the diner under the contemptuous stares of customers. "Those 2 will just drag him down." The retention spike happened when a male customer shouted loudly, "Get those 2 out of this neighborhood. They don't pay taxes. They don't have a home. They might even be thieves." Liam turned back, looked directly at the man, and said one sentence that silenced the entire diner. "You should be ashamed of yourself for saying that in front of a child." Mara trembled when she saw Liam confronting others for her sake. It was the first time anyone had defended her unconditionally. The 3 of them left the diner, no job, no money, and now seen as burdens by the entire neighborhood. But when they got home, Lily ran over, hugged Emmy, and cheered, "You're back." That moment gave Mara her first hope in many sleepless days. Later that afternoon, Liam sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. The weight of his decision was sinking in. No income, 3 people depending on him, bills coming due. Mara sat across from him, guilt written across her face. "I'm so sorry. I've ruined everything for you." "You didn't ruin anything," Liam said quietly. "I made a choice, and I'd make it again." "But your job, I've had worse jobs, and I've been through worse situations. We'll figure it out." "How can you be so calm?" Liam looked toward the living room where the 2 girls were playing with the old stuffed animals. "Because being angry doesn't help anyone. And because my daughter is watching how I handle this, I want her to learn that doing the right thing matters more than being comfortable." Mara's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't deserve this kindness." "It's not about deserving. It's about being human." That evening, neighbors started talking. Mrs. Chen from next door came over with a casserole. "I heard what happened at the diner. Linda was wrong. You did the right thing." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I don't have much, but I can bring dinner sometimes. And I can watch the girls if you need to look for work." Other neighbors weren't so kind. Some crossed the street to avoid them. Some whispered loudly enough to be heard. "He's going to regret this. Taking in strangers. Stupid." But a few, like Mrs. Chen, quietly offered support. A bag of groceries left on the doorstep. A note with phone numbers for job openings. Small kindnesses that reminded Liam why he'd made his choice. Would you have stayed silent or spoken up? Tell us in the comments below. That night, after Lily and Emmy had fallen asleep, Mara asked to speak privately. She was trembling as she revealed the truth she'd been hiding from the beginning. "My ex-husband didn't just leave," she said quietly. "He got into debt, got involved with a fraud ring, and he left all the debt in my name. When he disappeared, they came looking for Mara, demanding money, threatening both mother and daughter. She lost her job because people assumed she was involved. Then her landlord evicted her for causing trouble. Mara cried, "I was afraid you'd think I did something wrong, but I was just trying to protect Emmy." Liam was quiet for a moment, then said, "You didn't do anything wrong. You were betrayed." But the first twist came when Mara opened her suitcase and pulled out an envelope that shouldn't have existed. A subpoena sent to her old company, confirming she had no involvement in her husband's crimes. But her manager had hidden it to blame her instead. Liam clenched his fists. "You were framed from the beginning." But they didn't have time to breathe. Neighbors were knocking urgently on the door. "The police are looking for Ms. Mara. Debt collectors are also lurking at the end of the street." Mara panicked, holding Emmy tight. Liam looked out the window and saw two unfamiliar cars parked across the street, lights on. The second twist arrived. The debt collectors didn't just want money. They wanted to use Mara as bait to lure her ex-husband out of hiding. Liam realized, "They're not going to leave. You're their key." Mara collapsed. "I've put you and Lily in danger." Liam placed his hand on her shoulder and said the second freeze moment line, "If you and Emmy are being hunted, then I'll be the one standing between you and them." He immediately made a plan. Take Lily and Emmy to trustworthy neighbor Mrs. Hughes' house, then return with Mara to gather evidence to prove her innocence. They went to Mara's old company late at night when the building was nearly empty, except for a few security guards doing rounds. Liam knew from his years of maintenance work how to avoid cameras, which hallways had blind spots, which doors were left unlocked after hours. They snuck into the document storage room on the third floor. Rows and rows of filing cabinets stretched into the darkness. Mara knew exactly where to look, the muscle memory of years working here, guiding her hands even in the dim light from their phone flashlights. She pulled out folder after folder. Financial records, email printouts, memos marked confidential. Each document told part of the story of her destruction. Mara proved that the manager, a man named Richard Stokes, had forged signatures, created false evidence to push her out onto the street and take the blame for his embezzlement scheme. The documents were damning, email chains discussing how to handle the Mara problem. One email from Stokes to the CEO read, "We can't let her testimony reach the auditors. Suggest immediate termination and character assassination to discredit any future claims." Altered financial records bore her forged signature, transferring funds to accounts she'd never opened. A paper trail showing deliberate, methodical destruction of her reputation over 6 months. "This is enough," Liam said, taking photos with his phone, making sure to capture every detail, every signature, every damning line of text. "This proves you're innocent." Mara was shaking as she read through documents she'd never seen before. They planned this for months. They knew exactly what they were doing. They destroyed my life to save themselves. "And now we're going to destroy them right back," Liam said grimly. "Legally, properly, but completely." They photographed over 200 pages of evidence. Bank statements, internal memos, witness statements from other employees who had been pressured to lie about Mara. A comprehensive case of corporate fraud, conspiracy, and defamation. But just as they were about to leave with enough data, the storage room door burst open. 2 men from the debt collection ring appeared, clearly having followed Mara for a long time. Liam stood in front of Mara, even though he had no weapons. One of them sneered, "Single dad? You think you can stop us?" Liam didn't try to fight them recklessly. He hit the fire alarm button on the wall, making alarms ring throughout the building and forcing them to run because all the cameras would activate. Mara fell to the floor, breathing like she'd just come back to life. Liam helped her up and said, "We have evidence, and from now on, they can't touch you anymore." They ran out of the building as security guards rushed in. In the chaos, no one noticed 2 people slipping away into the night. Back at Mrs. Hughes's house, they found both girls asleep, curled up together on the couch. Mrs. Hughes had given them hot chocolate and told them stories until they couldn't keep their eyes open anymore. "Are they safe?" Mrs. Hughes asked. "We will be," Liam said. "We have what we need." That night, Liam stayed up organizing all the evidence. Photos of documents, recorded conversations he'd made on his phone while in the storage room, A timeline of events proving Mara had been systematically destroyed by people who wanted to cover their own crimes. Mara sat beside him, watching him work with an expression of disbelief. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because you're innocent, and innocent people deserve to be protected." "But you've already lost your job because of me. You could lose more." "I lost a job at a place that didn't value decency. That's not really a loss." "But what if we can't prove it? What if they don't believe us?" Liam looked at her directly. "Then we keep fighting. But we fight together. You're not alone anymore." Those words broke something open in Mara. She had been alone for so long, carrying everything by herself, believing that no one would ever stand beside her again. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank me. Just let me help, that's all." The next morning, they brought everything to the police station. Detective Harper, a woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for taking fraud cases seriously, listened to their story. She reviewed the evidence for an hour, then looked up at them with a grim expression. "This is worse than I thought. Your ex-husband's fraud ring was connected to your old company's embezzlement scheme. They used you as a scapegoat to hide millions of dollars in stolen funds." "Can you help her?" Liam asked. "I can do more than help. I can make sure everyone involved goes to prison." Detective Harper stood up. "Ms. Mara, you're not just a victim. You're a witness to major corporate fraud. We've been investigating your old company for months. These documents you've provided are the missing pieces." Mara couldn't believe what she was hearing. "So, I'm not in trouble?" "You're completely innocent, and after today, everyone will know it." The next morning, Detective Harper launched a full investigation. She confirmed that all documents showed Mara was completely innocent and had actually been deliberately framed. Harper also discovered that Mara's old company manager had embezzled money and used her as a shield. An official investigation was opened immediately. News spread quickly through the neighborhood. "That poor woman, she was innocent all along." Several neighbors came to apologize to Liam for their misunderstanding. Mr. Patterson from 3 houses down brought over groceries. "I'm sorry, Liam. I should have known you better." Ms. Linda from the diner heard the news and stood frozen like she'd been struck by lightning. Some customers turned on her. "How dare you kick them out onto the street?" Liam took mother and daughter to the police station for protection during the investigation. Emmy held Lily's hand and wouldn't let go for a second. Harper obtained warrants for the 2 debt collectors from the previous night. They were arrested while trying to find Mara again. By afternoon, the investigation concluded. Mara was completely innocent. Her ex-husband had been placed on the wanted list. Mara burst into tears when Harper said, "You're protected now." The community reversed course completely. People from the old diner asked Liam to convey their apologies to Mara. Several neighbors brought food and clothes for mother and daughter. Social media picked up the story. "Single dad protects innocent mother from false accusations," trended locally, then regionally, then nationally. News crews showed up at Liam's apartment. He refused all interviews. "This isn't about me being a hero. It's about doing what anyone should do." But reporters talked to neighbors instead. Mrs. Chen told them, "That man sacrificed his job to stand up for what was right. We should all be ashamed we didn't support him sooner." The diner where Liam used to work faced backlash. Customers boycotted. Ms. Linda had to close for 3 days. When she finally reopened, she came to Liam's door personally. "I was wrong," she said simply. "I'm sorry if you want your job back." "I don't," Liam said, "but I appreciate the apology." Mara wanted to find a new place to rent, but landlords still rejected her because of her old debt records. Even though she was proven innocent, the credit history took time to update. Everyone still thought she was trouble. They sat in Liam's living room that evening, Mara fighting back tears of frustration. "I can't stay here forever." "You've done enough." Liam was quiet for a moment, then said something that made the entire room go still. "If they won't let you rent anywhere else, then you stay here, with us." Mara choked up, unable to believe her ears. Emmy hugged Liam's legs and whispered, "Mister, you won't leave us, will you?" Liam knelt down and gently touched the little girl's head. "We're a team now." Lily jumped up excitedly. "Does that mean Emmy's my sister?" If Emmy wants to be, Liam said. Emmy nodded so hard her whole body shook. For the first time in weeks of living in fear, Mara allowed herself to smile genuinely. Not a forced smile or a grateful smile, but a real smile of relief and hope. Detective Harper called later that day. I wanted to let you know the manager who framed you was arrested this morning. The company is facing federal charges, and your ex-husband was picked up in Nevada trying to cross into Mexico. It's really over? Mara asked. It's really over. You're free. That night, they had a celebration dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread, but it was the best meal any of them had eaten in months. Because it wasn't just food, it was freedom, safety, family. If you believe dignity always deserves respect, let us know in the comments. I'm Liam Carter. I'm not a hero, I'm just a father trying not to let the world hurt my daughter. But the night I saw Mara and Emmy standing outside the diner, something in my heart told me not to turn away. I'd been poor. I'd slept in my truck. I'd been looked at like a burden. I recognized that desperate look in their eyes immediately. I didn't think helping them would get me in trouble with my boss, with my neighbors, or with criminals. But if I had turned my back, I wouldn't be able to look my daughter in the eye and teach her about kindness anymore. Mara is stronger than she thinks. When she told me the whole truth, I just saw a mother fighting every day to keep her child safe. I used to think my life was complicated enough, but when they walked into our lives, I realized that home isn't just a place. It's where people truly need you. Now every morning, Lily and Emmy brush their teeth side by side. I hear their laughter as they run back and forth through our small living room, and my heart feels lighter in a strange way. Mara isn't completely healed yet. Every wound needs time. But every time she looks at me and whispers thank you, I know I made the right choice. I don't know what the future holds. But today, there are 4 bowls on our table instead of 2, and that makes this small room so much warmer. A week later, Mara found a job. Not in accounting yet, but as an assistant at a local law firm. Detective Harper had put in a good word for her. The pay wasn't great, but it was honest work. I can start paying you rent, she said one evening. We're not landlord and tenant, Liam replied. We're family. You pay what you can for groceries and save the rest for Emmy's future. You can't keep doing this. I'm not doing anything except living with people I care about. Emmy started calling Liam Uncle Liam. It happened naturally one morning at breakfast, and after that it stuck. Lily declared that Emmy was her sister forever and ever, and made Emmy cross her heart and promise never to leave. The apartment was crowded, sometimes chaotic, often loud, but it was filled with something that had been missing for 3 years, the sound of a full household. Laughter, conversations, the noise of people who cared about each other. Mrs. Chen told Liam one day, "You've changed since they came. You smile more." I didn't realize I'd stopped, Liam admitted. Grief does that, makes you forget how to be happy, but those 2 brought the light back to your home. They did, Liam agreed. They really did. If you're listening to this story, remember that sometimes a simple sentence like, "Stay with us," can save a life, can change everything, can remind someone that they matter. Mara and Emmy weren't just people I helped. They were people who helped me remember why being kind matters, why standing up for others matters, why refusing to look away from suffering matters. We saved each other, and that's the truth of it. Not a hero story, just a human story, the kind that happens every day when people choose compassion over convenience. And I hope you'd make the same choice. Home isn't 4 walls and a roof. Home is where someone says you can stay and means it. Be the person who offers shelter when someone has nowhere to go. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Strong Dad Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.